Serafina lived among ghosts, not of people, but of pigments and canvas. In her small New York studio, she brought forgotten masterpieces back to life. The call came on a Tuesday, a voice as smooth as old varnish, introducing a Mr. Alastair Finch. He had acquired the Twilight Veil, a painting thought lost for a century. He wanted her, and only her, to restore it. The offer was a key to a world she had only ever been able to press her face against the glass to see. Before she answered, she spent the night researching the Twilight Veil and its creator, an enigmatic Romantic-era painter, were the stuff of myth. There were only a few mentions in old auction catalogs and a vague reference in a contemporary's diary. The less she found, the more her curiosity burned. This painting wasn't just a job, it was a secret wrapped in canvas. Alastair's penthouse was a cathedral of art, and he was its enigmatic high priest. Floor-to-ceiling windows revealed a city that looked like a painting itself. The walls were lined with masterpieces, each one fit to be the crown jewel of a museum. The air was thick with silence and the scent of polished wood and old oil as Serafina stepped inside. She felt she had crossed a threshold from the real world into one of absolute beauty and power. Alastair was sharper than the lines of a master's sketch, with eyes that held the depth of ancient pigments. He spoke of art not as an investment, but as a religion. "The painting needs a delicate hand," he said, his gaze lingering on her, not the canvas, a touch that understands its soul. In that moment, Serafina knew he wasn't just talking about the painting. The terms were simple, complete privacy, and she was to work exclusively in his penthouse. "I want the painting to remain here under my protection," he said, his voice soft, but leaving no room for argument. He was isolating her, creating a world for just the two of them, where the only reality was the canvas and the growing pull between them. She agreed, captivated by both the job and the man. The first few days were filled with silence. Serafina set up her equipment, analyzed the chemical makeup of the varnish, and mapped every inch of the cracked surface. Alastair was her shadow, watching for hours, his presence both calming and unnerving. He asked no questions, just observed, as if her concentration were a form of art in itself. One evening, he told her the story of the painting. "They say the artist painted it for his forbidden love." Alastair began, his voice low and mesmerizing. He poured all of his longing into it, knowing they could never be together. "It's not just a portrait of a woman, it's a portrait of an impossible love." As he spoke, Serafina felt the story seeping into her, coloring her perception of the canvas. The connection sparked over a palette of solvents. He moved closer to examine a detail, his hand brushing against hers. It was a fleeting touch, but it shot through her like an electric current. She looked up, and their eyes met over the cracked varnish. The silence in the room became deafening, filled with unspoken words. Later, over glasses of wine the color of blood rubies, their conversation became its own canvas. They painted their histories with words, their vulnerabilities with shared silences. She spoke of a lonely childhood spent in books. He of the pressures of his powerful family. They were two different worlds, finding common ground in art and solitude. When he touched her, it was with the reverence she reserved for centuries-old canvases. His lips on hers were not a conquest, but a discovery. In the sanctuary of his rooms, they created a symphony of skin and shadow, a masterpiece of fleeting, breathtaking moments. Their connection, born of art, had now become art itself. The following days were a whirlwind of turpentine and touch. Serafina would lose herself in the delicate cartography of the painting's cracks, only to find herself again in Alastair's gaze. Their affair was a secret language spoken in the quiet of the studio, a dance of escalating intimacy where the restoration of the canvas mirrored the uncovering of their own hearts. One day, While discussing the supposed artist, Alastair made a slip. He mentioned a pigment that was only made available a decade after the artist's death. He corrected himself quickly, blaming fatigue, and Serafina let it go, caught up in the moment. But the words, like a drop of ink in clear water, lingered in her mind. It was a speck of blue, no bigger than a pinprick, hidden in the deepest shadows of the painted drapery. Cerulean, a color that had no business being in this painting. A whisper from the future in a voice from the past. A cold not formed in Serafina's stomach. It was wrong. A single dissonant note in a perfect symphony she showed him. Alastair smiled a slow, reassuring smile. The master was an alchemist, he whispered, leading her away from the easel. He played with time. He drew her to the window, overlooking the city lights, his hands tracing the line of her spine. He was answering her scientific doubt with physical certainty, a body language so eloquent it silenced the alarms in her head. That night, lying beside him in the dark, she couldn't sleep. His steady breathing was the only sound in the room, but a chorus of doubt screamed in her mind. His touch still burned on her skin, but the cold logic of her profession warred with the warmth of her feelings. The slip of the tongue, the impossible pigment, the story that was too smooth. The pieces weren't fitting. The next day, while Alastair was at a meeting, she acted. She photographed the pigment sample and sent it in an encrypted message to her former professor, Dr. Anya Sharma, a brilliant pigment historian in London. Anya, urgent question. Could this pigment exist in the 1830s, even as an experiment? She typed, her heart pounding. The reply came hours later. Serafina, impossible. The formula for cerulean wasn't stabilized until 1860. Whatever you're working on, it's not what it seems. Be careful. The message was short, but its implications were vast. The trust she'd placed in Alastair fractured like old varnish. There was no more room for doubt. This wasn't a matter of art. It was a matter of truth. Her professional ethics demanded answers. That night, after the penthouse fell silent, she slipped into the studio. The portable X-ray scanner she'd brought to analyze the underlayers sat in a corner. Her hands trembled as she powered it on. She was about to violate not just protocol, but the fragile trust between her and Alastair. The scanner hummed to life, peeling back the layers of paint to reveal the painting skeleton. And there it was, not the signature of a long-dead master, but a crisp, modern monogram woven into the underpainting. A single elegant K. The truth hit her with the force of a physical blow. The painting, their connection. Alastair. It was all a forgery. Didn't sleep for the rest of the night, sitting in a chair and staring at the fake. The betrayal was as bitter as a chemical solvent. Every tender word, every stolen kiss now felt like part of an elaborate deception. By dawn, her grief had hardened into a cold fury. She would not be a victim. She would confront him. The confrontation was quiet, brutal. She didn't scream. She simply showed him the image on her tablet. The color drained from Alastair's face. "I can explain," he started, but his voice faltered. In his eyes, she saw not just panic, but the desperation of a man caught in a trap not of his own making. Just then, the door opened. The man who entered was Alastair's opposite. Cold as steel, where Alastair was warm as silk. "It seems our restorer is cleverer than you gave her credit for, my boy," the man said. "This is my partner, Casper," Alastair said, his voice strained. And then Serafina understood. Alastair wasn't the player. He was a piece on the board. Laid out the truth with the detached precision of a surgeon. The painting was his. Alastair was merely his curator. And she, Serafina, was the final crucial tool. Her reputation was the seal of authenticity they needed. "You will finish your work," Casper said, his voice leaving no room for argument. Because if you don't, Casper continued, his voice turning to ice. Mr. Finch's past indiscretions will become public knowledge, and your own career will be ruined. We have ways of discrediting even the most respected experts. He tossed a folder onto the table. You're a part of this now, whether you like it or not. Left alone to complete her task, Serafina stood before the canvas. The love was a lie, the art of forgery. They thought they had trapped her, made her a tool for their deceit, but they had forgotten who she was. She wasn't just an artist, she was a scientist. A master of pigments and chemistry. She picked up a vial of her own concoction. She would finish the painting, but she would embed her own secret within its layers, a truth that would sleep, waiting for the right light to awaken it. Her masterpiece would not be a restoration, but a revelation.